Hey guys, what's up? B. Thomas. Tonight we're here back with the Green Scorpion with the top 10 video game geomancers. Yep, these guys literally changed the terrain of battle since, well, they manipulate the Earth. So, let's see which one handles the battlefield the best. So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's go! Bring it. Let's go. This sounded good.
Earth, the element of substance, giving us a place to stand and build our
We're
homes,
literally
fertile
standing
enough
on
to
the
grow
Earth.
our own food. But dormant in this trusted provider is a strength that has existed long before us and will endure long after. Welcome back to Weapons Month 4, everybody. I am the Green Scorpion, and in the past 3 weeks, we've looked into the elements of fire, air, and water. And now we're moving forward to those with the fortitude to command Earth. That's right, these videos are in the Avatar cycle. Geomancy is a strange case in video
We had fire,
games
we had
in
wind,
that it
we
is
had water.
incredibly prevalent,
Finish it up
but so
with Earth.
rarely recognized. In most RPGs, Earth will only get a handful of spells, if any, and will not be considered a type of elemental damage, which makes sense. It's not burning or freezing you, oftentimes it's just more blunt damage like any other normal weapon.
True.
Not that magic is the only
Sometimes
way to
they
wield
usually
Earth
just
anyway. You
use
could
it
have
for
some type of
defense.
seismic technology,
Earth and
be
walls and
made
all.
of stone, or just enjoy throwing rocks. There's all manner
Yeah,
of golems and
don't think that's
rock-based
gonna
fighters
count.
out there, usually the slow but strong fighters with an emphasis on defense and endurance, but different subcategories of the element also exist depending on region or preference. For example, a character could specialize in
Right.
the finer variation of sand, or the glitzy, naturally forming crystals that the planet creates. So while only a
I
few
was gonna say
franchises
ice
really
there,
have a
but,
category for
guess that's
Earth characters,
later.
I found more and more characters that qualify. The more I dug, the more geomancers seem to emerge from my research.
This
So
should be
let's lay
good.
down some ground rules.
Yeah.
For starters, I'm not going to be putting a hard focus on metal bending. Yes, I just made an Avatar reference and is a source that really has influenced this month for me. And they
Fair
have
enough.
a point that metal is just refined Earth. I just don't want us calling people geomancers just because they have metal weapons. If the
Fair,
metal
that'd be a
bending in
little
question
harsh.
really is the extension of some kind of Earth power, then so be it. I also am not really interested in plant manipulation. I can see the argument. The Earth and plant life are often grouped together to represent nature, but to limit myself, I'm defining Earth as any kind of
Remember.
solid, inorganic, naturally forming material.
So basically,
Also,
rock,
keep in mind that
sand.
we're talking about Earth
and all
as a
that.
material, not specifically the planet Earth. Even if you're on another world, if you're shaking the ground, you're still a geomancer in my book. But that's enough dredging. I am the Green Scorpion, and these are the top
Let's go.
10 video game geomancers.
Hey, oink.
I am so proud of this one.
Oh boy.
Sergeant Jet Brody
Oh,
is the hero
Fracture.
of Fracture. You know, Fracture, the over-the-shoulder shooter on the PS3 and 360. The incredibly marketable franchise by the acclaimed developers Wargaming Chicago Baltimore.
No.
Yeah, it really wasn't a memorable title. Brody himself isn't the most fascinating chap either, described by Electronic Gaming Monthly as perhaps the single most derivative character in the modern age of gaming. And
Oof,
a direct combination
that's
of
a
the
bad
heroes
one.
from Resistance, Mass Effect, Gears of War, and 2 Human. He's a cookie-cutter marine and a cookie-cutter shooter. In 2161, the planet has long suffered from global warming, and the center of the United States is flooded, separating the US into 2 warring territories, the Atlantic and the Pacific. You guys do know that the West and the East Coast are the parts that would have flooded first, right? When the Pacifics go too far with their genetic research, the Atlantics mount an attack on their superior technology, led by Brody. Wow, that's pretty stupid. And I would think it was a parody if it wasn't taking itself too seriously. But the plot
Kinda
isn't
would
the
be a
star of this
parody.
game, nor is Brody. The star is his signature gun, the Entrencher. With this handy device, Brody can deform the terrain in his sights, causing it to rise into hills or depress into trenches. While he is also armed with the standard machine guns and assault rifles of other Marines, this terraforming ability gives Brody a tactical edge over the bloodthirsty Californians. You under heavy fire? Make a molehill into a mountain for some cover.
Pretty
Having
much.
trouble in tight corridors? Raise the ground to squish your assailants into the ceiling. You can even make ramps and jumps on the fly while riding your dune buggy. But the awesome tech doesn't stop there. With
Oh.
spike grenades, Brody can create a spire beneath himself to suddenly give him high ground or help him reach ledges. The lodestone rifle can reproportion the Earth's gravitational field,
dice.
increasing it
That's
around a
giant
single
boulders.
spot to draw in objects. This usually means creating shields out of boulders before rolling them at specific threats. There's also the vortex grenades, which cause gravitational havoc wherever you throw them. Pretty cool not only using rocks, but incorporating the gravity of the planet itself. Of course, Brody's got weapons that aren't rock or gravity based. Besides a slew of standard guns, there are other toys like the flesh-eating bugs and even an ice rifle. But even when just armed with the entrencher, Brody can usually find some way to deal with his enemies. Sorry, California, not even Schwarzenegger can save you now.
Yeah, you just gotta rely on Jeff Brody, huh? Alright, number 9, coming up.
I love golems. Whether they're made of clay or iron, these guardians of Hebrew folktale appear in all sorts of fantasy, though the most common are made of some form of stone. Now, with Chaos and Morphling, I got pretty excited because they were actually made of water. But I don't really award the same glory to Geomancers for being made of stone. I mean, it's kind of a common building material. There's Goda from Breath of Fire, Kragolanch from Kid Icarus Uprising, the 16 Colossi are all a blend of flesh and architecture. Heck, I ran a pretty awesome Golurk in one of my Pokemon teams. He's a ghost golem, what's not to like? They all throw their weight around in an effective way that, yeah, is pretty much using Earth as a weapon, but Aganos from Killer Instinct takes this to a whole new level. Or should I say, a whole new layer? Geology humor.
Yeah, we get it. Oh, there you go. Argonos. Aren't you interesting?
Constructed by a civilization long forgotten, Aganos is the last of a league of magical war golems whose steadfast power has been sought by generals and warmongers for countless generations. He fought innumerable battles for any civilization or cause under the command of hundreds of leaders, until one king gave him a command not to fight or kill, but to think. Aganos was prompted to no longer be a mindless instrument of destruction, but an independent being, and Aganos grew to view this king as not a master, but as a friend. But when the ancient evil, the sorcerer Khan Ra, is freed from his prison, the king asks Aganos for his aid one last time. With his ability of choice renewing his purpose, Aganos' spirit has endured where his body has not. Over time, his copper and steel broke away, and Aganos replaced it with stone and vines until he came to resemble an avatar of nature.
Thunder Eagle.
Finally released in Season 2 for Killer Instinct, Aganos utilizes the most mystical arts of forgotten technology and sorcery. Aganos towers over the rest of the KI roster, and despite being the juggernaut of the group and literally banging rocks together, he's actually extremely technical. When given a moment, Aganos can scoop up and enchant a large rock, adding it to his body. Each of these boulders offers him armor against one hit. But Aganos isn't just about tanking and gathering moss. He can also use these rocks offensively, crushing them and firing the bits forward like a shotgun. Or he can expend his resources to create a stone wall behind his opponent. Usually the point of a wall is to defend, but Aganos uses it to keep his foes near even after dealing a huge knockback move. The walls each can take 3 hits or knockbacks, but with the right move, Aganos can wall up his enemy through the wall, dealing an extra 20% damage. He can erect up to 4 walls at a time, and if he hits them through multiple walls, well, goodbye life bar. It's a little bit tricky to pull off though, so luckily Aganos has other options, like picking up the wall and using it as a club, an extremely imposing one that spans 3/4 of the screen. He can also roll like a boulder, and has a shadow attack where he pounds the ground, shaking stones loose from the ground that rain down. This debris is nearly impossible to flat out dodge, and in the words of Maximilian dude, you kinda just have to sit there and deal with it. Playing as Aganos certainly isn't easy. He's a big target, and there's a lot of risk in getting these setups. But with what seem like a few simple tools, he can become nearly unstoppable and combo enemies into oblivion. Plus, that design.
Yeah, it does look pretty dope. There you go, Argonos. You got him. Burn to dust, Omen. Goodbye. Argonos wins!
Awesome victory!
I had to say it. Okay, number 8.
There is a form of magic unknown to many Runeterrans, and discredited by those few who are even aware of its existence. It is the magic of the earth, drawing power from the resonance of crystals and gems.
They are truly
Outrageous.
And League of Legends,
Oh, I'm
right?
sorry. Were you expecting Malphite? Hey, I don't blame you. Malphite's a great champion, but as I just got done saying, being made of stone doesn't automatically make you the better Geomancer. Tarek the Gem Knight harnesses the magic of the earth, as the lore says, and comes into battle with a menagerie of jewels to get the job done. Yeah, jewels. They're rocks too. I actually talked about Tarek a while ago, where he was my number 14 favorite champion of all time. And while that list has changed for me a lot over the past couple of years, my love for this histrionic paladin hasn't eroded. But at the risk of repeating myself, I'll try to keep this discussion to how Tarek uses his minerals in a way very unique to this list. Tarek was taught the lost art of gem magic by his father in hopes that he would become a great healer. But wishing to take a more active stance against harm, Tarek pursued knighthood, wishing to protect the weak instead of simply patching them back up again. He's very interested in the meaning of gems, and keeps a number of them on hand as spell components.
Emerald for insight. Opal for harmony. Ruby for vigor. Sapphire for divinity.
Mostly though, you'll notice
gem
the
healers
gems
will
he's
love this
encrusted
guy,
into his
huh?
armor and warhammer. In his standard outfit, I think maybe they're indicolites, but he can also sport some fashionable emeralds, badass blood diamonds, or fabulous rose quartz. The colors are purely cosmetic, but believe me, these gems come in handy. Using the magic within them, Tarek can heal himself or allies, passively increase the armor of those around him, and during his ultimate Radiance, the gem's glory can make his entire party stronger. With most earth elementals, fighting with rocks is all about their hardness and size. Tarek actually factors in the other qualities examined in mineralogy. The luster of the stone on his shield contributes to his move Dazzle, which stuns and damages opponents. And then there's the stone's cleavage and fracture. Tarek can actually shatter the gems on his plate mail, decreasing his own defenses but shredding the armor of enemies around him. So yeah, after Janna and Nami in the past few weeks, this is starting to look like the month of supports. And yes, that is where Tarek is usually played. But the bards still sing of a lost meta where Tarek was played as a solo top. He's got the defenses for it, and look at his passive. Gemcraft activates every time Tarek uses an ability, causing his next basic attack to deal bonus damage proportional to his armor. Which makes sense, those stones on his hammer are the same as on his plate. But really, does that sound like the passive of a support who can't fend for himself every once in a while? Heck, I knew a guy who used to run full AP Tarek with dazzles that could pierce Kevlar. Me, I'll stick to the healing, stunning, and getting those occasional big hits in. With crystal clarity, Tarek brings a bit of refinement to this rough quarry of fighters.
Gems hold.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you gotta give him credit. He definitely did it work. Anywho. So, yeah. So far, we got a Babylonian Golem, a healing gem, paladin, and standard Marine with a geo gun. Alright, let's see who's next.
Hold their edge.
Okay, one more time. Number 7 is a hero from Dota 2.
Dota.
I must be coming down with something. I keep ranking Dota characters above League champions this month. Don't get used to it. I still don't play a lot of Dota, and I can really only write about heroes I'm familiar with. But how can I not talk about the Sand King? He's a giant scorpion. The world of Dota has an endless desert known as the Scintillant Waste, so vast that it is said to have a mind of its own. It protects its inhabitants and punishes foreigners who might do them harm, but when in need for a more direct communication with the world, it created its envoy, filling a carapace created by a djinn with magical sand and a fragment of its own wisdom. Thus, Crixilus was born. Known by his enemies as the Sand King, he is the very will of the desert taking form of a scorpion. Well, he looked more like a scorpion in Dota All-Stars, and in Dota 2 looks more like something Johan Vasquez would design. But he's got the tail,
I'd be a little
so I
nervous
say
if
he's
I saw this guy.
That's what made me play him in the first place. It's exciting to have a Geomancer primarily based around sand. He's not exactly Gara, but the Sand King makes appropriate use of the sub-element while also keeping in some more stable earthbending. Now, forgive me, I'm not the most up-to-date on Dota's meta right now. But from what I can tell, this arthropod is incredibly versatile, seeing play in the jungle, as a hard lane pusher, as a support to set up kills, and even sometimes as a semi-carry. Great in the mid-game, he has a tendency to fall behind at max level, but serves his team for his talents at initiating teamfights and possibly the most damaging AoE skill set around. Besides being pretty quick on his feet,
multiple legs,
the Sand King uses Burrowing Strike to get around. This allows him to dig under obstacles and avoid spells, while also sending up spires above him. It's also a great way to farm creeps, even while going in for an assault on the enemy hero. The real desert powers manifest when he summons a sandstorm from the scintillating waste itself. This can deal a nice 100 damage per second to anyone in the area, but also hides Sand King from enemies as long as he's not actively attacking. It's great for adding more damage while attacking or slipping away like a mirage. He also has Caustic Finale, a poison from its tail that dries out its victim. Dying while poisoned will cause the victim to explode, the brittle pieces of its body pelting enemies around it. Finally, there's Epicenter, causing the ground around him to shudder violently, hurling all others careless enough to stay in its ever-increasing radius. His skills may not scale with strength or agility, but like a desert storm, Sand King comes in fast and hard and sometimes without warning. Now, like I said, I don't always think of Dota heroes when constructing these lists. Even though I played the game for an infinitesimal amount of time, I really can only speak for what few heroes I have experience with. But when a stream of rocks rushes straight towards you, and a giant scorpion shoots out while creating a simultaneous sandstorm and earthquake,
yeah, I'd be worried too.
It leaves a lasting impression. And sand in some very uncomfortable places.
Eesh, that's the anthem.
It stings, doesn't it?
Number 6.
Once again,
Oh,
Pokemon gives
Pokemon.
me a lot of choices. True, there's no Earth type in the game. There's kind
That's
of
mostly
two,
ground and rock.
and ground. One is
So,
the hard,
what do we got?
immovable mineral side of the element, including
rock.
stone and jewel-based attacks, while the other is described as the stuff below us, the planet, mud,
Rock?
dirt, and sand. Well, considering that, I should probably go with a combination of the two, possibly Rhyperior. But if you saw last week's love letter to Kyogre, you might have guessed that I went with
Groudon?
its eternal opposite, Groudon. I
Yeah,
had mixed
makes
feelings about
sense.
Growzilla when the first Gen 3 artwork started trickling out. My reaction to the starter and legendaries was something like, "Aw, that's adorable." A little awkward, but I get it. A lot of people are gonna like you. Big water legendary? I'm in.
Cool.
Oh,
Hi.
okay, I mean,
Awkward.
what is he? I love Yu-Gi-Oh, but I don't want it in my Pokemon. It looks like a T-Rex fused with the razors my hair cutter uses. I eventually
fair.
warmed up to him when I came to understand the delicate balance at work here. 1, he's Bahamut to Kyogre's Leviathan. I'm always down for some Arabic iconography. And 2, he's basically the avatar of land, while Kyogre is the avatar of the seas. In the same way the Sand King
So, I'll
is the
be
vessel
honest,
for the desert,
I mostly chose
Groudon's like the
Kyogre.
vessel of Pangea. As a pure ground type, Groudon's inherently weak to Kyogre, but while he was often outclassed by his rival, his legendary status was still apparent by his massive attack stat, not to mention his equally cataclysmic appearance in Ruby and Omega Ruby. Like Kyogre with Rain, Groudon's ability Drought creates intense sunlight. In battle, this means the power of water moves is cut in half. He's still
You know,
weak to
the thing
water,
he's
but
weak
at least
to?
it gives him a fighting chance. It also means that fire-type moves get stronger, and the grass-type move Solar Beam loses its annoying charge-up time. Both of these being
I think
moves
Solar
Groudon
Blade
has
too, if
access
you
to.
can play it right.
But that's not really earthy, is it? In the climax to Ruby, the sunlight is actually slowly evaporating the planet's oceans, meaning there's more dry land as a whole. That's pretty cool, though I still think Kyogre's version is a bit more appropriate. With Groudon, it seems Earth is the ends, but not often the means. This is a list about manipulating and using Earth, not just forging more real estate. Well, while the sunlight protects Groudon and his water-soluble body, the Titan also has some pretty potent
Yeah,
stab earthquakes, not to
version.
mention a lot of popular rock moves like Rock Slide and Stealth Rocks, the latter of which still lingering all over competitive play. But I think Omega Ruby is where Groudon ascended from niche team builder to standalone
Perceptive
threat.
Blaze. Whew.
First, it's got its new signature move, Precipice Blades, a seismic barrage of pinnacles hitting at 120 base power and stab. And while Kyogre kind of bellied up from it, Groudon really took advantage of Primal Reversion, gaining all of the qualities it really needed. 30 more points in his already gratuitous attack stat, raised special attack so that sets with Earth Power and Eruption now make more sense, and an added Fire type, which might seem to make him less Earth-based, but actually is to represent the molten core of the Earth and the magma that formed it in primordial times. True, you're better off giving him Fire Blast or Fire Punch than Lava Plume, but the options are there. The ground fire typing might serve to
Desolate
highlight its
Land. Look at
crippling
that.
weakness to water, but actually Primal Groudon has it covered with its new ability, Desolate Land. Above Primal Groudon, the sun's rays grow so intense that water-type moves become absolutely useless.
Yeah,
And
look,
that
see?
makes way more sense than the other way around for Primal Kyogre. All in all, I can't praise Groudon as highly as Kyogre. Too much of what he does is only roundabout geomancy, but it's hard to plant my feet against those earthquakes and precipice blades. And I really do appreciate them incorporating lava. He's one of the truest examples of an earthshaker.
Okay. The fact that desolate sunlight takes out water, yeah, good luck trying to hit it, especially with the fire typing.
It says a lot about the power of Earth when a character I originally imagined would be number 1
Isaac.
shows up at number 5. But that's just how it is for Isaac, always coming up a bit short.
Oof.
The Golden Sun games are criminally underplayed, his last appearance was a poorly marketed DS title, and now they won't even let him be an assist trophy anymore. It's my hope that by the time this video is out, Nintendo's announced him as a DLC character for Smash Bros. But it's
Unfortunately,
unlikely, such is the life of an RPG hero. Isaac is from the town of Vale, which is situated at the base of a dormant volcano. Like his parents, he was born a Venus adept, able to use synergy to manipulate nature, thus mainly meaning rocks, though depending on his class he could extend to plants. When Isaac was 14, a terrible thunderstorm hit the volcano, sending a boulder tumbling into Vale. The young Isaac tried and failed to stop it and witnessed the supposed death of his old friend Felix, Felix's parents, and Isaac's own father. Racked with guilt at his weakness, he promised to devote his life to mastery of his psionic abilities. Isaac is a silent protagonist in Golden Sun, though it is implied that he's not mute, just that his dialogue isn't shown to the player, sort of like Jack in the first Jak and Daxter game. Through others, it's implied that Isaac is very kind-hearted and very bright, but still harbors a lot of disappointment in himself. He eventually gets wrapped up in and eventually leads a quest to save the very world, and at the risk of spoilers, it doesn't go the way he planned it. So much so that his trial is extended into the second game. So much for that self-esteem boost. The majority of the sequel actually stars Felix, who, cat's out of the bag, didn't really die.
He's still alive.
Felix actually sets out on an equally valiant quest, believing that Isaac's actions won't actually save the world, but in fact prevent its true salvation. Following suit with Jak, Isaac now talks and is surprisingly more hot-headed than we expected, partly due to his failures in the first game. Through all the hard knocks, though, Isaac manages to improve greatly. He's one of my favorite examples of the trope, took a level in badass, becoming whom fans believe to be the most powerful adept in the series, and eventually the savior he always hoped he could be. As you might remember with Ivan, the Jin system from Golden Sun allows for a lot of variations by mixing elements, but for me, the best way to go is all Earth with the Squire class series. Over time, this Squire becomes a Slayer. He masters a number of weapons, favoring longswords, and has practically the highest attack of all of the party members in either game, often even out-damaging the supposed bruiser Garrett. But despite a sparse pool of synergy points, Isaac's most impressive displays are in his synergies. Starting things off are a series of Quake, Earthquake, and Quake Sphere, which not only shake the ground but send up rectangular tectonic platforms to bounce multiple enemies. Isaac's signature is the set of Gaia, Mother Gaia, and Grand Gaia, in which Isaac commands the ground around the enemies to rise up, engulfing the entire party. It should be noted that Grand Gaia is the highest level synergy spell in the game. Also tucked away is Ragnarok,
There it is.
in which Isaac draws the Venus energy out of the planet and into a giant sword of Damocles that thrusts into his opponents. And at the Lord class, this upgrades to Odyssey, conjuring multiple monolith Earth energy swords. That looks like it could make a great final smash, just saying. The Squire class also holds some always useful healing abilities, but mostly sticks to the devastating seismic attacks.
Makes sense.
In other classes, however, Isaac has more supportive abilities, status effects, and his collection of Briar and Thorn synergies if that's what you're interested in. And that's not even getting into his summons. With enough Venus Djinn collected, Isaac can call upon the Earth Elemental Venus or the Golem like Ramses for some more rumble. But by far the best summon in the game is the last in the Venus line, a being known only as Judgment. So I know this is more of a godly light blast from the sky, not a rock. But notice that the Judgment doesn't just shoot this FU laser right on top of the enemy, but far away, letting the uproar of the planet's surface ripple until it finally crashes on top of the enemy party. He's not destroying you with the Earth, he's destroying you with the destruction of the Earth. And that reminds me, Isaac and Felix, as the two Venus adepts of the games, are the only ones able to wield the ultimate Soul Sword, which has an unleash ability called Megiddo, wherein the Earthbender jumps into the air, plunges a blade into a falling meteorite, and slams it into the planet. Megiddo is actually a reference to Tel Megiddo, a small semi-mountainous area in northern Israel, which the Book of Revelations prophesizes as the site of the Battle of Armageddon and the end of the world. So, Ragnarok, Judgment, and Megiddo. Isaac, is there something you want to tell us? Nintendo, please give in to his demands and put him in Smash. I don't think he's bluffing here.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him, considering what he could do. Yeesh. Alright, number 4.
Well, after all of that,
Mm-hmm.
I need someone a little more straightforward.
Okay. Oh, hello.
Here we go. Lexius, another Organization 13 member. And despite making appearances in a number of side games, we really don't know too much about this guy when you get right down to it. We know his name used to be Alias and that he and Einzo were pretty tight, and this continues when both of them are turned into nobodies. But even though that's technically more backstory than Demyx or Luxord, this guy kind of falls out of people's memories because he is kind of a bland personality.
Oof,
it's easy to peg him
hurts.
as the big, dumb one, but it's more that he's just quiet and chooses his moves carefully. He's
Sounds
part
right.
of the group of suspected traitors sent to Castle Oblivion, though he and Zexion are pretty loyal to Xemnas and do their best to put a stop to other traitors. It's just that Zexion is the brains and Lexius is the quiet muscle.
Sounds
Well,
right.
until he starts fighting, then he's the very loud muscle. Lexius fights with what the game calls an axe sword and is the strongest of the Organization 13
I like to call it
members
the
when it
Buster
comes to
Sword.
pure bulk. This is complemented by a command over Earth that actually increases relative to Lex's physical strength. In Chain of Memories, he used a move where he pulled chunks of rock from the floor and punched them to send fragments shooting everywhere. And I gotta say, I like the effect, especially how there's a little bit of marble flooring that cracks off of the stones when he pulls it, like he's actually bringing the bedrock of the castle all the way up to the floor. Wait a minute, doesn't Lexius fight Riku several stories up? Well, anyway.
Yeah,
In
don't
Kingdom
think about
Hearts
it too
2
much.
Final Mix, Lexius really only does one thing. But he does it well.
Dana.
In this battle, it's all about the stalagmites. They're big, they hit hard, and there's a lot of them. His battle also has this power meter at the top. In Chain of Memories, Lexius could increase his personal Richter scale to become momentarily invincible or knock Riku back, but here it's all about concentrated attack power. I don't know what unit of measurement is used here, but that number's getting really big and I want it to stop. Eventually Lex will mix it up. He throws you into the wall and makes stalagmites. He jumps away and comes down like a rogue asteroid and creates more stalagmites. And there's an attack where he throws Sora up into the air and slams him back into the ground to create even more stalagmites. You say dominant strategy, he says stalagmites. Compared to Isaac, the kid has a lot more varied uses of Earth and might even be more powerful. But not only does Lexius specialize exclusively in rocks, he's strong and, more importantly, fast. It's implied that there's a casting time for Isaac's synergies, but Lexius is a non-stop
so
rock
much.
slide. It's Newton's first law. He may stay in the back and bide his time, but once in motion, he tends to stay in motion. The question is, Sora, are you an equal and opposite reaction?
It looks like you are. And I gotta say, always be careful with the quiet ones, because you never know what they're capable of. They may be strong, fast, or smart. Or a combination of 3. And definitely brings out that one. Alright, we're nearly there, so Final 3, here we go.
About a month ago, when I counted down the top 10 tragic boss battles, I mentioned the ending to Infamous 2. Well, I mentioned the bad ending, which brought the majority of my comment section to tears. Hey, I'm right there with you, friends. But assuming you aren't a traitorous bastard and played the good ending, the canon ending results in the complete extinction of the conduits on the planet. Right?
Well, not really.
Well, no, we're
Yeah,
not done
Second
pumping
Son.
out sequels yet, which brings us to Second Son, where the world's population of conduits is reduced to about 10%. Brooke Augustine was an average soldier and one of the many to put their lives on the line trying to fight off the beast. Miraculously, however, she survived the
Chica.
encounter where others perished, and the experience awakened her dormant conduit powers over concrete. Have I mentioned that Second Son has some of the coolest powers imaginable? Given the urban setting of the game, we don't just get retreads of the previous games like Fire and Ice, we get smoke, neon, and video. Unique powers that are right at home in the big city. So while Augustine seems to have power over Earth in general, she uses it to control the processed aggregate stone and admixtures of Seattle. The buildings,
So
the
basically
sidewalks,
concrete.
they're all at her command. Of course, she wasn't always so powerful. And after the events of Infamous 2, people outside of New Marais were quick to vilify any conduit freaks as a threat. Augustine tried to run for a time, but with her old life and her new life on the brink of war, she made the tough call. She turned on her conduit friends, capturing them and turning them over to the military in exchange for her own freedom. Augustine decided that if the conduits couldn't be free, she could at least make sure they were safe. Recognized for her assistance against the bioterrorist threat of conduits, the military praised Augustine, and she was eventually able to form the Department of United
DUP.
Protection, using her powers to create a secluded prison especially for conduits where they would be safe from the hatred and harassment of the world. They might never understand what she's doing for them, but she assumed it was for their own good. Over the next 7 years, her morality on the issue grew more and more inflexible. She would stop at no length to catch a conduit, even willing to hurt them if need be. This
And
included
innocents, too.
Augustine's unique brand of torture, cement daggers. The sharpened stones are stabbed into the victim and then fused to their bones. The only way these daggers can be safely removed is by Augustine's own power.
Yeah. Her.
Enter Delsin Rowe, the game's protagonist with the unique power to copy the abilities of other conduits. So he's basically Peter Petrelli. To save the people interrogated by the cement daggers, he sets out to steal Augustine's power, hoping he can take down the DUP in the process. And Augustine's certainly not making it easy for him. It's bad enough she's actually found a way to impart her powers to DUP foot soldiers, meaning she can forge a whole army of geomancers, but throughout the game, Delsin's going to have a few run-ins with the stone wall herself. While encasing people in concrete and cement daggers are great, she changes her tactics when going toe-to-toe with Delsin. She can levitate a rock below her feet as a floating platform, allowing her to completely ignore gravity, and call upon hundreds of concrete satellites that protect her while also flinging them as projectiles. Not only does this keep Delsin away, it forces him to stay on the move. These projectiles change in size, speed, and travel arc. It's pretty intimidating the first time you see it, and if Delsin runs out of juice, she might completely overwhelm him before he can recharge. Augustine is smart and knows where she has the advantage, and even when Delsin gets the upper hand in the final showdown, she makes a really ballsy move and lets Delsin take her power, knowing it will lock him into only using concrete without any other source of energy around. And as Augustine says, it's a new power for Delsin, while she's had 7 years to practice. Advantage Brooke. Delsin's a
For
sitting
now.
duck now, and if Eugene hadn't found some power cells to help him overclock the new power, we'd be looking at a Delsin pancake. Usually with boss characters, we have to make a lot of assumptions about what they can and can't do, but letting the player have the power really helps for this discussion. I mean, anything Delsin can do with the power, so can Augustine. This includes encasing oneself in stone and skating forward, forming stones on your arms that are fired like a machine gun, grinding the rocks into dust below you to achieve flight, and pounding the ground to make a quake. But Augustine proves that she's still the master, bringing the remains of the building together into an aggregate construct and switching between a giant scorpion thing to a snake to a manta ray that sweeps the floor. Fun fact, if you're going for the good ending, attacking Augustine is considered a good act for challenging a tyrant, but if you're evil, it's considered evil for disrupting the establishment. Whichever points you want, you get them. That's what I really like about Augustine the most. What she does to the conduits is really morally gray, which contrasts beautifully with Delsin Rowe and the player, who is eventually going for either all good or all evil. It's a tough job, but Augustine adamantly controls the middle ground.
Okay. She is a bit of a dick, considering
Yeah,
what he did
well,
to the
that
brother.
happens.
You'll know.
Have I mentioned how surprisingly close this list got? I had already begun
Oh,
writing when two
good
characters
discretion.
emerged, and my bottom two Geomancers had to get pushed out to make room. The
Oh.
first one was Augustine, because I finally played Second Son, and the second was suddenly revealed as
Tremor.
DLC for Mortal Kombat X just this past July. This is Tremor. Mortal
that's
Kombat
right.
X actually isn't the
Nice.
first appearance of this stone-skinned assassin. He was actually an escaped convict in Mortal Kombat Special Forces, but I never gave that
then again,
spin-off a second thought. He
I don't
also
think
appeared
anyone
as a
else
sort
did.
of secret character in Mortal Kombat 9, but now here he is making his true playable
Oh.
fighting game debut
Oh.
in a new rebooted Mortal Kombat timeline. Tremor is part of what I like
Starts
to
with
call the
9,
Ninja series.
keeps going there.
Every ninja gets a color and an element. Air Max, Scorpion, Reptile, Sub-Zero, Rain, Smoke, and in brown, Tremor. It's a shame, we used to have a ninja rainbow, but the new looks for each of them is definitely an improvement. Tremor himself has skin that he can turn to stone at will. With these rock limbs, he's able to manipulate all forms of gravel and stone around him. He gained
Apparently
his
lava,
power
too.
after years of serving Kano in the Black Dragon clan of arms dealers. Kano sent him to the Dream Realm to retrieve a valuable weapon, and his time in that world had a strange effect on him, imbuing him with the power of an earth elemental, so he's basically a demigod now. That's good enough for me, I've never really questioned the MK lore. Tremor
Fair
may
enough.
be the new kid on the block, but he's not going to let anyone call him freshman. Mortal Kombat X introduces variations for each character, allowing you to choose between 3 titles to change up a combatant's moveset a bit. This proves Tremor to be as versatile as he is powerful. If only Rain had made it to MKX sooner, he might have done better himself. In his Aftershock variation, Tremor sticks to rocks and gains the ability to quake the ground, interrupting an opponent who isn't either jumping or low blocking. There's a slight delay in this down pulse, but it's great for forcing an opponent to react or punishing them with a hard-hitting combo. What's especially devious is the fact that he can shake the ground even while he himself is in the air. Metallic Tremor has two sides to him. His stone arms can either be refined into solid gold, making punches and projectiles slower but heavier, or he can change stances into smoldering magma, adding burning effects.
That's
As
metallic.
we discussed with Groudon, I really like the idea of working in lava, which is really just molten earth, but how about gold? It's a precious metal found naturally in the ground, an inherent part of the earth. I know I wasn't really planning on making metal a thing on this list, but the fact that he's turning his arms into stone and refining them himself using heat and pressure, well, that's pretty slick. Finally, the Crystalline variation combines Aghanos' ability to armor himself and tank hits with Tarik's outrageous fashion sense. No matter what form he takes, however, you can expect a metric ton of granite-armed super punches and rock throws. High, low, arcing, rolling, big ones, small ones, or just as big as your head.
Oh,
And he knows how to break a spine. There's so many great brutalities and
Christ.
fatalities with this guy, just... Ugh. Actually, some of these brutalities are kinda hilarious.
oh yeah, it turns it into a gold one.
Oh hey look, he turned him to stone.
Pretty much.
Typical.
Oh, there you go. How do you do that?
Wow, way to add insult to death, Tremor.
Pretty much.
So,
And
most
one?
of you are probably watching this list and are noticing the surprising lack of a certain fantasy RPG franchise.
So, who's
Well,
the...
I don't blame you, seeing as Titan really lives up to his name.
Oh, hello. That's a big boy. Literally, sorry I had to say it. Jesus.
Titan is the Eidolon of Earth, reoccurring throughout the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy
So like
IV's library
Leviathan with
describes him
water.
as a great
Interesting.
giant who rends the very earth asunder. The great chasms he creates in the ground can swallow armies of soldiers. His mighty arms rend earth and stone, feeding his foes to Gaia's gaping maw. Well, yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, with one stomp, it just separated all of the Mist Valley from the rest of the continent. Throughout the series, Titan is your go-to summon for earth damage, putting his foot down with Earth's Fury, Anger of the Land, and Gaia's Fury,
wrath.
opening fissures and wrecking the enemy. There isn't a lot of earth elemental spells out there, so when you want it, you come to him. Except in Final Fantasy IX, then you summon Fenrir, but only with Titan's close supervision. He's usually depicted as a
Really?
colossal old man with skin of mud and clay, but then there are other appearances like Final Fantasy XIII, where he's the fallacy in charge of Grand Pulse. Yes, the whole planet. And he's so big, he actually consumes giant adamantoises like they were mere morsels. And may I remind you
Gets
that
me
those
hungry.
are about the size of an Apatosaurus? Eat your heart out, Kronos. I could go from game to game like I did with Leviathan, but the real tour de force is in Final
here.
Fantasy XIV, A
14.
Realm Reborn.
Yep,
Yeah,
the
remember
MMO.
that broken MMO Square released a few years back? Since its rebranding,
anymore.
it's actually really shaped up. I don't have my own account, only because
I
I
do.
banned myself from MMOs for fear of over-obsession. But it only took a few hours with my friend for me to understand that Primal Battle against Titan is the stuff of legend. Let me take a quote again, this time from the official website. The indomitable will of the earth made manifest, beloved by the kobold clans, compassionate and gentle, Titan is a father to— wait,
Father, what?
Compassionate and gentle? Bullcrap! Look at
Yeah,
this
no-
battle! I guess the idea is that Titan only once left his kobold children left alone, but when the chips are down, he means business. A party of 4 must venture into the navel and put this primal back to rest. Well, that's on normal difficulty. You can also challenge the raid on hard or extreme difficulty, which requires nothing less than a small army of perfectly trained, well-leveled heroes of light working in perfect tandem, and if just one teammate slips up even a bit, it spells certain failure for the party. You see, Titan is nothing if not well prepared, and opts to fight you on this platform raised hundreds of feet above any solid ground, surrounded by stone and a molten landscape. If you fall off this platform, or more likely get pushed off, that's it. Game over. There's no getting back up, there's no getting revived. Your party is now one warrior down. But not
So
only
basically
will
watch
Titan
the
exploit
edges.
the ring out,
Oops.
he's smarter than he looks, and will plan his attacks in a way to disrupt your party's synergy, making this one of the most ingeniously complex raid bosses I've ever seen in any MMO. One of Titan's main attacks is called Mountain Buster. The name actually has two meanings. Not only is he literally kicking small mountains at you, your best option is for the party's tank to step in front and take the damage. The only problem is Mountain Buster actually casts a stacking debuff on targets, causing them to take more damage from attacks. So if you keep using the same tank, they'll eventually be too squishy to survive the smallest pebbles. This means your team needs a plan for multiple tanks to take shifts. There's also Tumult, which is basically unavoidable damage to everyone. And with Weight of the Land sending up plumes of lava which are very difficult to avoid, the damage racks up fast. Whoever is healing the party needs to be on their A game. The problem is, Titan doesn't like healers. Once Titan identifies who the team's best healer is and who is doing the most damage per second to him, he throws out some granite gals to encase those two in stone. The encased characters are unable to move, attack, or heal, and in moments the gals will explode, killing them instantly. The only way to get them out of there is for the other party members to attack the gals. But you have to be quick, because meanwhile Titan's preparing an upheaval to knock everybody back, likely off the rock. The only way to ensure your safety during an upheaval is to stand just below Titan, practically up his butt, except then, how can you help your friends encased in the gals? The more damage Titan is sustained, he gets angrier and by extension, stronger, sending up more tumults and plumes. His landslide attack starts as just a simple line, but later splits into 3 or even 5 branches.
Oh, that was so close.
Rock bombs become a factor, which sit on the field and explode after a few moments. Then he starts creating golems to give you trouble. This match is all about positioning, and sometimes it seems like there's no safe spot. You just gotta make one. And at every threshold of damage, he'll go into Geocrush. How cool of a name is that? Geocrush, the Lord of Crash, jumps into the air before crashing back into the center of the platform, damaging everyone. The closer you are to the center of the platform, the more damage you take, which is stressful considering that for upheaval, you have to be right at the center. Still, you don't want to be too close to the edge. Every time Geocrush lands, more of the platform's perimeter will crumble away, giving the party even less space to avoid bombs, plumes, landslides, golems, and the big guy
better hope you got a high healer, otherwise
you're done. It's so easy to lose people in the constantly shrinking stage, and everyone is vital. Without good healers, Tumult will make quick work of the party. Without DPS, Titan will never die. Without at least 2 tanks, Mountain Buster will quickly reduce any off tanks to rubble. Titan thought of everything, and he's got the raw power to back up his plan. Earth isn't just an element of strength, as strong as one must be to wield it. It is an element of wisdom, of endurance, of patience, and careful thought. It may chip away, but it lasts. Countless parties charge into the navel every day trying to best Titan at his mightiest, and only the most well-coordinated teams can emerge from the dirt victorious. It's not a mere show of brawn or battle of wits. It is the war of substance, and when you outlast Titan, you outlast the will of the Earth itself. I'm the Green Scorpion, and we'll be charging things up for next week. See you guys then.
Well, there you go. Titan from Final Fantasy XIV takes the top spot, which, considering like you have to like really plan it out, and again, Final Fantasy XIV dungeons, you really got to plan. Whew. Good luck. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that one, because frankly, yikes. Till next time, like, subscribe for more. See ya.